Probably 90% of the people that we sit down with for the very first time don't really have an idea of when they can retire, how they're going to retire.
You wrote this because you're passionate about it. You really want to help people. Why is that?
It's not about accumulating a bunch of money and hoarding it so that when you're gone, that either your kids or organizations get a bunch of your money. It's about how do you embrace that next chapter?
Get a financial planner. Get a financial advisor. It's so important and so beneficial.
The first lesson, enjoying the fruits of your labor, it's like you deserve this. You have worked for all of these years to enjoy life. You know, when you enter that chapter of retirement, you've got a window to enjoy it. Welcome to the Retire and Thrive podcast, that we will help you live your life with purpose, wealth, and confidence. I'm Dan Langworthy, founder of Fortress Financial. I've been a financial advisor now for 35 years, and I also have written the book, Retire and Thrive. And the purpose of the book is really to help people that are approaching retirement to really understand some of the decisions they're going to make, maybe not so much about the financials, but really about how to live life on purpose. So I've got my co-host here.
Yes. Hello. My name's Kami Rosler. I am a TV anchor in Minnesota and a friend of Dan's. We actually met on the golf course. I happen to play golf on the golf course that he lives on, but we also met at a PGA golf tournament, and we've become friends, and we both have a passion for finances. And the retirement side of things is a little different for me, so this is going to be so exciting. And we're so happy that you're on this journey with us, because we're starting a podcast because we want to help others, and we have a different perspective on things a little bit. And it'll be fun to dig into some of your knowledge. And I'll be here to just ask the questions and also have that other perspective. And if you at home have any questions for us as you're following along, please comment below. We will answer your questions in our podcasts ahead. And we're really excited. So Dan, my first question for you is, why in the world do you want to start a podcast right now? You're a busy man. You have so much going on, but a podcast is something you seem to be pretty passionate about.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I was hoping you weren't going to ask me about my golf handicap relative to yours. So
I haven't been playing that well right now. But it's been enjoyable to be out there and enjoying the nice weather.
Great question. And I think for me, you know, being a financial advisor for 35 years, one of my passions was education, helping people make good decisions. And last year, I ended up writing a book, Retire and Thrive.
Right. Retire and Thrive. We have it right here.
And it's a very short read. It's a 2 to 3 hour read. And in that book, there's 7 lessons that basically this podcast is centered around. And so for us, starting this podcast, I think you were a perfect fit. You're going to draw in a little bit different audience than necessarily what I would draw in, of course, because it may be hard to believe, but you're actually quite a bit younger than me. So, but no, back to your question, I think the main purpose of this is just to educate people. And of course, everybody likes to do podcasts. And our intent here is to just educate people. And at the end of the day, make sure that they make good decisions with their money.
And I think when we look at retirement, we hear that word. It's different for everyone of all ages. But I think something that resonates with most people is that it can be a little scary. And when you're thinking of money and a financial planner and how can I afford this? How can I afford supporting my grandchildren? How can you help people maybe on a more lighthearted side? I know your book, you mentioned, it doesn't dig into the finances. But when we're thinking of retirement, how are you able to resonate with people and kind of focus on some of the other things besides finances?
Yeah, great question. I think finance in general, like you said, it does get a little bit overwhelming. And I try to break it down really when we work with different people, whether they're younger like you or if they're people that are approaching retirement. Is I kind of look at it, Kami, from the standpoint is really you can break down finance into one of 2 categories. You're either in the accumulation phase or you're in the distribution phase.
Yes.
And, you know, our firm is mainly focused on people approaching retirement. But obviously, we do have millennials that are still in that accumulation phase. And so when we start to look at it, the accumulation phase is really about how do I get the best return with the amount of time that I've got before I actually need this money. And the distribution phase, kind of on the opposite side, gets really complicated. And we'll dive into some of these in future episodes as we go through the book. But in these 7 lessons, the book is a fable, but it is actually based on experiences that I've had with clients of mine. So yeah, I think for today, I mainly just wanted to showcase that we are doing this podcast. We feel like it's going to resonate with all audiences, not just people that are approaching retirement or people that are retired, because we do touch on some of the things about accumulation. And clients of mine and other people that have read the book have come back to me and said, I want to make sure that I give this to my child so that they can start maybe a little bit early.
Yeah. Yeah. So exciting. We're really excited about this podcast and some of the episodes we have ahead. All right, Dan, there are a lot of financial podcasts out there. How will this podcast be different?
Well, I think there's several things that'll be different. One is it's centered around this particular book, which is a very easy to read, whether you are 28 years old or whether you're 78 years old. We're going to break down each one of these lessons in several different episodes. But I think when it comes to finance and financial podcasts, I think it does get to be very overwhelming. So we're going to take this complex world of finance. We're going to break it down. We're going to kind of chewable, easy bites to swallow, if you will.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that'll be different is, when I wrote the book, Retire and Thrive, there are lessons in there about retirement, but let's not forget the thrive part of it.
Right.
And the thrive part of it is more about lifestyle. It's not just about how do I make sure that I don't run out of money, but it's about that chapter in your life where you've worked your entire life to accumulate. And again, we'll touch on this in future episodes, Kami, but it's really about getting almost permission to say it's okay to splurge on myself.
Yeah. The thriving is so important. And Dan, we touch on the book often, and we will throughout this podcast and some of our episodes. And I want to make sure people know you wrote this because you were passionate about it. You're not trying to make a buck off a book. You really want to help people. Why is that? Why is that so important to you to help others?
I think for me, being in this space for 35 years, up until probably 10 years ago, it was all about where can I get the best return? It was all about investment management. How do I get the best managers? And so it was all focused on return. And at the end of the day, returns are returns. And obviously we can't control what happens in the overall market. But as a firm, we've gotten really heavy into the planning side of this. And this podcast is not about the firm Fortress Financial. This podcast is really about somebody sitting in, listen to this podcast, 15, 20 minutes or however long each episode goes. But really the purpose is that every episode you can walk away with something that maybe triggers something. Throughout these episodes, we're going to give some real world examples. Obviously, the names will be anonymous. But the main difference is, I think, is that we're going to embrace what retirement really should look like. And for me, that's why it's really important. It's not about accumulating a bunch of money and hoarding it so that when you're gone, that either your kids or organizations get a bunch of your money. It's about how do you embrace that next chapter. And again, we're going to give you some tools on that.
Yeah. And you have so many stories about clients that you've worked with. So I guess one question I have for you, since you do deal with so many people that are headed into retirement or already in retirement, when a lot of people come to you, are they worried? Do they seem concerned? What's the response you get from folks that are desperately looking for some help with their finances?
Interesting question. Of course, after all the years that I've been in this, we get lots of different people with different skill sets. We've got people with Excel spreadsheets that come to us. And of course, today with the advent of software, it's truly been a game changer for our firm to be able to navigate through some of these what if scenarios. What if I retire at this age versus this age or whatever? So I think at the end of the day, when we sit down with people, I don't know the exact number, Kami, but I would tell you probably 90% of the people that we sit down with for the very first time don't really have an idea of when they can retire, how they're going to retire. We had a client of ours saved very, very well and was very set, worked for a local company, nice pension, had some questions. Do I take this pension as a monthly income or in a lump sum? We ran through all of the numbers and showed him that he is basically set for life and very excited, ended up retiring a couple months later. And he called me up one day and he said, Dan, I get all of this and you've shown me all the numbers and it looks great, but where does the money come from? And I said, well, what do you mean? Where does the money come from? And he said, well, when I worked for my employer, I used to have a vacation fund. I used to have a home improvement fund, and I would just get this regular paycheck. And he says, I know I got a lot of money, but how do I get that to me? And does it make sense to just call you, or how does all that work? And so for me, it was kind of a basic question, but it's a real life question. Like, where does the money come from?
Yeah. And reading your book too, that was a big point in the book. You mentioned it numerous times. Get a financial planner, get a financial advisor. It's so important and so beneficial. So I guess that also can be scary for people. We'll touch on this in future episodes too. But when I think of a financial planner, and I don't necessarily know, I don't think everyone knows, what does that mean? How much money is that going to cost me? How easy is it to get an advisor or a planner, and how much does that typically cost a person, or does it not?
Yeah, I'd like to tell you we're free,
Mm-hmm.
but no, I think it varies across the board. There's different types of financial advisors, financial planners. I think the name is used kind of interchangeably. There's different firms that offer different services, and I think at the end of the day, it's just a matter of going out on the web, searching, and probably like you would do, probably even your doctor or any other professional. I think it's important to maybe interview 2, 3, 4 different ones, and I feel like obviously, in my opinion, your doctor is going to be the most important person that you talk to, and you make sure you get the right one there. But I think a financial advisor is very important because you want to make sure while you're on this journey that you find someone who resonates with really ultimately what you're after.
Yeah, and your financial advisor can help you continue to thrive. And so you're not scared to go to the doctor because you're like, I don't have the money here to do this. I'm a little worried.
Right.
But thriving is so important, and health is a big part of that. And I know that's something you're passionate about as well. Actually, let's get into that. You have some children and you have a passion for, golf and health and finances. And you're a likable person to be around. I think most of your employees here are a big fan of their boss. So tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you've been able to thrive in your life.
Well, thank you. And like I said, I've been at this a long, long time. You're right. I've got 3 kids, all in their mid to late 20s.
All seem to be doing pretty well.
Yeah. The oldest is soon to be 30, actually, next week. So shout out to her.
Yeah, there we go.
And I think for me, you look back as a parent and you kind of sometimes question some of the decisions that you make. But at the end of the day, I feel like my kids had heard this many, many times. In fact, my youngest son, I would say something to him when he was in his senior year in high school. I would say he would go to Starbucks and get a cup of coffee, or he would go to the local grocery store and buy something. And I said, well, how much did that cost? And he said, I know, Dad, I spent $5, and by the time I'm 65, it's going to be worth $185. I know the math. And so that was instilled at them at a young age to start saving at a young age. But the 2 things, and again, I'm not on this podcast to give parenting advice, but for me, what was important for me that I tried to instill in all 3 of my kids that was instilled at me at a young age is just work ethic. And so when I try to instill that with our team here, we also have a lot of younger people that work here. And I always say, if you want to be successful in this world, it takes hard work. And just because you work hard doesn't mean you're successful, but most of the people that I know successful didn't get there without working hard. So work ethic was a big thing for me, instilling in my kids. And, as a parent, sometimes you question some of the work ethic and you push them and push them and push them. And again, not to get too personal on you, but one of the other core things that I tried to convey to my kids was be independent and go out there and explore the world. And, again, not giving advice here, but that kind of backfired on me. I've got 3 kids and they're all in 3 different states. So it's not the same as if they were in my backyard.
Right.
So, but no, it's the kids are all doing great. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. But you also dedicated this book to your mother. She must have played a big role in your life and you growing up. Did you have a good work ethic?
I did. That actually came from my dad. My dad was kind of the hard knocks kind of, bootstraps, just work hard and pay your dues kind of thing. But I'm the youngest of 6 kids.
Okay.
And so
you're the baby.
I am the baby. And so when I was growing up, my next oldest brother was 3 years older than me. So in essence, I was an only child for 3 years, and my mom stayed home full time. And so I spent lots and lots of time with my mom for those 3 years, just her and I. And so, I don't want to say I had a beaver cleaver upbringing, but it was close. It was a great upbringing, and had, again, great values instilled in me. Grew up in a small town just 20 miles from here.
And it's made you who you are today.
I got to do a reverse on you. Let's hear about your background.
Oh, I grew up on a farm. I have 3 siblings. My twin brothers have taken over the farm, so I'm very proud of them. They are going to be 29 soon. And so, which is always good to see. And so I grew up on a farm, so you have that work ethic. And honestly, when you grow up on a farm, you're always kind of, well, at least me personally, I'm probably the most non-farm kid in my family. I was always like, oh, I want to live in the city. When you want what you can't have. But now that I live in a city, I enjoy it. And I like going back and visiting home. But when I do go back, it's like, oh, this place was pretty awesome, pretty enjoyable to get out into the country. I like baseball. I like golf. I like the Timberwolves. Hey, Minnesota fans are happy right now. The Twins are doing well. The Timberwolves are doing well. We'll take that. But those are my passions, golf and baseball. And I like to travel. And when I'm traveling, maybe I'm not budgeting as well as I should. So that's why I am happy to have a friend like Dan, because sometimes I'm single. I mean, I have a boyfriend, but I'm not married yet. So I'm using a little bit of my money to travel and have some fun. But yeah, I'm having a good time.
We call that
where
the
I'm at
go-go
right
years.
Yes.
So
Okay.
we kind of break that up into three categories. You got your go-go years, and then we've got the slow-go years.
Yeah.
And then as we get into the 80s, a lot of times it's the not going or the no-go years.
Right.
Yeah, so
right.
you're in that go-go years, so you should be doing
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm probably stepping out of that pretty soon, but we will see. Hopefully, I can still manage to golf. That's what I look forward to.
And if you're like me, we live in the Midwest here, of course, and there's a window to enjoy the weather.
Yes.
So typically, summertime isn't a big travel time. So
Right. I like to stay here in the summer. Absolutely. That's for sure. So Dan, I have one question before we wrap up here. Well, I have a couple, but I want to touch on, you mentioned that client of yours who had all this money and you were helping him manage it. How do you help people thrive who maybe come to you and you're like, ooh, you did not plan accordingly to thrive during retirement? How do you help them?
yeah, I think, again, part of it is just when we build out the financial plan for them, we get pretty granular and all of these are customizable. So in other words, we'll run different scenarios for them.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it's kind of the opposite, fortunately, that 95% of the people that come to us don't realize how good a position they are in financially. And so one of the lessons in the book is about cash flow. And so what I really mean by cash flow is income that's going to consistently come in, whether you're getting a paycheck or not. And so be it Social Security or pension or rental
Mm-hmm.
incomes. And again, we'll dive into that later. But periodically we'll get people that have very high aspirations. They're maybe 58 years old and they hadn't maybe necessarily done as good of a job as they thought. And we just come back with alternatives. So there is never a no. And it could be, 58-year-old that maybe hasn't saved enough and maybe they've went on the go-go years too much. I don't know, or traveled too much, but we just build out different scenarios. And it may be instead of retiring at 62, maybe you do have to retire at 64. Or have you considered instead of just doing a hard retire at 62, maybe you work part-time for a few years. And again, we'll just model those type of scenarios. So again, I think the software has been such a game changer for us just to be able to create different scenarios for
Right.
different clients. But at the end of the day, what it's really done is it's helped people get clarity about, am I on track or am I not on track?
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll dig into some of that software too, because it over the years and how many years you've been in this, it's probably changed drastically. And I know you're getting into AI a little bit too and learning more about that with your business. So there is a lot to get into on that side of things and how it can benefit all of us involved. So Dan, let's touch on some of our future episodes. We have a lot going on and we have 7 lessons that we of course will dig into, but it will be a lot more than just that.
Yeah. And I think the next episode, we'll just kind of touch on this, Kami. The next episode is kind of going back to that giving permission. And so the lesson number 1 in the book is learning how to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at the fruits of your labor, when I wrote that chapter, really for me, when I look back on my life being in my now late 50s, is I think about my life and how that's unfolded. And quite frankly, I think it resonates with a lot of our clients too, is that you go to school, you get your education, whether you go on and get further education in college or not. But ultimately, you go and you work somewhere and you get that first taste of that paycheck and you're kind of excited. And then depending on lifestyle, whether you meet a significant other or not, then at some point, it's very common. Then you start having children. And of course, to be honest with you, children are not free anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so the budgets are strained a little bit with kids and raising them and all of the different activities that they are in and cost associated with that. And so as you get into your 40s and even into your early 50s, it's just cost upon cost upon cost. And it just seems like you're always saving and scrimping
Yes.
and so forth. And then the kids, if they go on to college, then there's expenses that are associated with that, even though they've left the nest. And then we get into our mid 50s and we have this freedom of financial excess, if you will, more discretionary income because we're not having those expenses. So what we often see is that's when everybody just starts aggressively saving in their retirement plan because they have a little bit of that financial discretion that they didn't have. And then they come to us and they're age 60, 62 years old and they're ready to retire. And the challenge is that they don't know how to spend because they haven't spent for 40 years or for 35 years. It's all been save, 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 save. And so it's almost like, the first lesson, enjoying the fruits of your labor. It's like, you deserve this. You have worked for all of these years to enjoy life. And again, I don't want to get too granular here, but at the end of the day, when you enter that chapter of retirement, you've got a window to enjoy it. And we tell people, let's embrace that.
Yeah.
What's important to you?
It can be a little stressful for them because it's like, well, I've been saving all my life. I feel like this is not the right decision to make, but you're like, no, this is the time. So we look forward to that. We have a lot to get to in this podcast and some of our episodes ahead. And again, as I mentioned, if you have anything specific, this man is a wealth of knowledge. If you have anything in specific you would like us to touch on, maybe it's something that you're dealing with right now or that a loved one is dealing with right now, comment below. We can touch on some of these topics because we look forward to helping all in any way that we can. And I know that's something Dan is passionate about. So we look forward to that. Anything else that you want to close with, Dan?
I think we'll see everybody on the other side on episode 2.
Yes.
Where we will kind of dive more into that, enjoying the fruits of your labor.
Yeah. And we look forward to that. Thank you so much for joining us. Please like and subscribe to this channel because we're starting right now and we are hoping to grow and create a relationship with you and maybe educate you in certain ways that you didn't even know you needed some education on. So we look forward to that. And we thank you so much for joining us today.